Muchísimas gracias, Tatiana Tovar. Muchas gracias también a Ítalo, las palabras de Alfredo Moreno, quien se tuvo que ir, para entonces tener claro el contexto público-privado respecto a la temática que hoy nos reúne en este seminario. Los quiero invitar a ambos para que se puedan ubicar más cómodos y así poder avanzar nosotros al próximo bloque. A Tatiana e Ítalo, gracias por habernos acompañado acá en el escenario. Es importante también en el contexto que estamos tratando en el seminario conocer la experiencia internacional, cómo han resuelto estos desafíos en otros países. Vamos a el primer bloque internacional, el marco del consenso para la colaboración ética, la experiencia de Canadá. Va a ser presentado por la señora Crisula Nikidis, vicepresidenta de Innovative Medicines de Canadá. Y la exposición, la iniciativa Pro Transparencia de Farma Industria de España, que va a ser presentada por el señor José Samarriego, director de la Unidad de Supervisión Deontológica de Farma Industria España. Al término de ambas exposiciones, vamos a tener una ronda de preguntas para esas presentaciones del bloque internacional. Dejo con ustedes a la señora Crisula Nikidis, vicepresidenta de Innovative Medicines de Canadá, con la exposición entonces El marco de consenso para la colaboración ética de Canadá. Crisula, adelante, bienvenida.
Good morning, buenos dias. I am honored to be here today and for the invitation to present on ethics and compliance. I'll bring to you today my thoughts that I've developed in the past 10 years working with Canada, but also with the IFPMA and with APEC. And maybe, after all these great discussions, bring forward some actions that will help advance ethics in our industry. We've heard quite a lot today. This morning about the culture of ethics, conflict of interest, transparency, and codes of ethics. I'll try to do justice to this topic today and we'll try to explore the importance of building trust and ethics through ethical collaborations. The industry has been sending a clear signal that the commitment to ethical practices is very important. We believe in it. The industry has in the past been plagued with negative public perceptions, particularly with regards to business ethics. And most can agree that innovative medicines and vaccines save lives. Rather than let our old reputation dictate our future, we've chosen to become leaders in ethics. What we also know is that relationships are the foundation of business and policy. Good relationships bring good business. We're convinced of the old adage that we are stronger when we work together with our partners. Our goals are aligned with broader healthcare community. We want to ensure that patients have the best possible health outcomes while ensuring the long-term sustainability of the healthcare system. We also know another cliche expression that two brains really are better than one. And the way that we conduct the research that leads to exciting healthcare innovations is reflective of that. Increasingly, we work with partners across the life sciences spectrum for pharmaceutical research and medical devices. We are moving away from the silos of the past and towards alliances with academic, the biotech sector, research centers, and governments. We have a lot of ground to cover today. I'll start to tell you a bit more about the industry's global commitment to ethics, and together we will then explore how we translate this internationally, regionally, and locally. Just do this. Before I start, I just wanted you to note that there's two websites that you can find all the information you require regarding APEC and the Mexico City principles, and all the information is downloaded regarding our forums as well. So let me just first situate ourselves. We live in a very, very complex environment There are a number of different things in play. We know we have rules and regulations like the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, the UK Bribery Act, growing pressure from the Latin American and anti-corruption institution and movements. We know we have association codes, and we restrict ourselves as an industry. We set very clear guidelines on how we want to work and the framework we believe in. Healthcare organizations and academia have another set of guidelines that we have to abide by and respect. So we have to navigate a very, very complex environment, as you see. I've read that trust is believing that person who is trusted will be what is expected. In organizational settings, trust may have a positive influence on the behaviors, perceptions, and performances of a person. Trust can lead groups to work together to accomplish more than they could individually. But where trust is absent, projects will fail. I spoke with a number of you yesterday, and we all came to the same conclusions. The tools we have available to us, codes and consensus frameworks and ethical guidelines, are all tools that help us build trust and openness, which in turn allows us to have a seat at the table. The messages we are hearing from our stakeholders are clear. More transparency and openness could lead to stronger, more collaborative partnerships, which then will gain trust. Recognizing the importance of trust and transparency, and that structure is foundational. The industry has worked very closely with our global partners to put in place tools that help enable strong ethical relationships between the actors in the healthcare system. So what do we know about our ethical practices? Building trust and ethical behavior is vital to better healthcare and to innovation. We know that the presence and perception of unethical behavior in the biopharmaceutical and medical device sectors undermines trust, leading to significant adverse consequences for research-based multinational enterprises. But building trust can lead to collaboration and innovation. It can improve the reputation, and it can better our brand strength. These consequences have direct impact on every segment of the business. They also erode industry's efforts to get closer to patients. For these reasons, the industry has a collective incentive and responsibility to itself, its partners, and patients to strengthen and harmonize ethical business practices. I'll speak to you a little bit about the Asia Pacific Economic Corporation, and then I'll leave it later to my colleague Andrew Blasey, who will develop that a little bit more. But the APEC Corporation has recognized the benefits of strong ethical practices in the biopharmaceutical and medical device sectors. For patients and healthcare providers, they can enhance access to safe and innovative medicines. For industry, they help equalize the competitive environment and reduce reputational risk and improve access to markets. Strong ethical practices are good news for governments, too. They strengthen industry self-regulation and compliance with high standards and lowers enforcement burdens. It improves patient trust in the healthcare system and improves health outcomes and product quality and supports trade. For economies, they help support economic growth, innovation, and consumer confidence. Leveraging the highest global standards as a reference, the initiative convened the Public-Private Expert Working Group in 2011 to prepare the APEC principles for voluntary codes of ethics in the biopharmaceutical sector, the Mexico City principles, and the APEC principles for voluntary codes of ethics in the medical device sector, the Kuala Lumpur principles. At that time, the United States invited Mexico, the Ministry of Economy, and Canada, Innovative Medicines Canada, to co-chair the expert working group that developed the Mexico City principles. Following the announcement of support for both sets of principles by APEC economic leaders and ministers, a majority capacity building program was launched to facilitate the adoption of effective implementation of codes of ethics. With over $5 million in direct and in-kind contributions extended by the APEC Secretariat and member governments, industry, and other health systems, the initiative has facilitated a doubling in the number of industry codes from 37 in 2012 to 74 codes by 2017. Expanded high standard practices to more than 19,000 companies. Over 125 of the world's leading industry compliance experts were able to volunteer and mentor this initiative. And since 2012, this team has led the development of a local and novel curriculum based on the APEC principles and delivered 7 in-person training programs, over 1,300 collective attendees. In each case, these programs utilize a train-the-trainer approach, underpinning dozens of additional local training programs, nearly all member economies. The next APEC training program would take place in July of 2018 in Japan. So as we said, the Mexico City Principles, created in 2011 in Mexico, have been disseminated to the 21 economies where codes have been adopted and aligned with these principles. In 2014, we developed the Nanjing Declaration with a number of goals. Universal Industry Association codes, implementation of industry association codes by the majority of the members, and consensus frameworks for multi-stakeholder ethical collaboration in every APEC economy. So the initiative has facilitated consensus-based frameworks to strengthen ethical business practices aligned with the APEC principles and across the entire national health system. So the first frameworks, we'll talk about a bit more about what a framework is. So if we look at it, the consensus and principle-based voluntary agreement between pharmaceutical and or medical technology industry associations and leading non-industry health systems across to collaborate in strengthening ethical business practices across the sectors using a whole-of-system approach. It's a very general definition of what a consensus framework could be. As you'll see, as I progress in the presentation, you'll see how each region or country has developed a different framework, but each one is an approach that reflects the nation and the country that we're in. So what is the framework? The key elements. It's voluntary and principle-based agreement, achieved through consensus, so working together in collaboration. There are usually more than 3 national parties to it. So industry associations and healthcare professional groups, possibly patient organization, nurses organizations, third-party intermediaries, hospitals, governments, payers. And you'll see that reflected through the different ones that the different consensus frameworks that we've developed around the world. Provisions are customized to the local situation, so aligned with international best practices. It remains open to new parties, so it doesn't expire, it's not static, it's something you can build on. It's a trust-building platform to exchange ideas and undertake joint implementation activities. So beyond the concept of an ethical consensus framework on ethics, there are, at that opportunity, once you've developed a table of stakeholders, you're able to bring other topics to that table because there's trusted partnership amongst the collaborators. And they're not codes of ethics, so it's very different than that. What are the potential joint activity? You can have regular conferences of the parties, to exchange best practices, build capacity, and or access the environment for opportunities and challenges. Codes of ethics compendiums and a comparison to drive alignment with best practices. You can have joint ethics and integrity curriculums, other initiatives aimed to strengthen the health system, draw shared attention to the bad actors in the healthcare system, or actually maybe even to the good actors in the healthcare system, and develop a foundation of trust for dialogue. As I said, you can bring other topics to the table at that point. So first consensus framework was developed at the global level by the IFPMA. At the time, we had a number of industry players. It started off with the IFPMA, inviting the World Medical Association, the World Nurses Association, World Patient Organizations, and the pharmacists. And it took some time to develop this collaboration, and it was very patient-centric. We talked about ethical research. We talked about independence of ethical conduct, gifts, sponsorships. And we tried to find a common ground, but not the lowest standard. What we tried to find is a common standard amongst all the different principles that all these organizations had. And we created a stakeholder roundtable, which today still exists, and where there's other discussions that are brought to the table. And the notion was that those consensus frameworks would then be developed outside of the international realm. Canada was the first to develop one as a national organization. So in 2015, we developed one. In 2016, it was our launch. The consensus framework in Canada is very, very reflective of the same one at the international level. So we have the Canadian Medical Association, the Nurses Association, patient groups, and pharmacists at the table. Again, shared solution, common ethical principles, very patient-centric, with some clear guidelines around how activities should take place. We in Canada have had a number of roundtables with our stakeholders. We convene this. In our situation, it's often the association that has convened these roundtables, but in other situations, there's times that the Canadian Medical Association has convened these. And it really helps build trust. We can actually go forward to the government and have discussions with the government, telling them that we already have a collaboration amongst the key stakeholders in the industry on ethics. Peru is here today and can speak to this a little bit later, was the first South American consensus framework. Built in a different manner, though. It has the actors around the table, 24 industry partners. We have generic and devices at the table, HCPs, patients, governments, pharmacies, and hospitals. So a much larger framework, but again, builds trusts, improve the health outcomes, and we have government involvement in this one. So that was a very interesting, different aspect. And I think today Angela would be able to speak about how helpful this consensus framework has been in certain situations that Peru is going through today. Vietnam, we signed that in 2016, and it's the first one in the Asia-Pacific region. There we go, sorry. Again, a little bit more reflective of what the global one it looks like, with industries, domestic and MNCs, HCPs, and the Women's Union that was part of it. Again, very patient-centric, spoke about ethical research and innovation, and put this document together. What's important to know is that it's not only about putting a document together and then leaving it. It's really about the journey getting to these consensus frameworks. It's about the collaboration you build with your stakeholders as you put these together. It's about the trust you build at that time. The recognition that, and in Canada, that it was quite interesting for us, is we recognized immediately as we were starting to put together our codes and look at all the different guidelines that we had the same common standards and values as the Nurses Association, as the Pharmacists Association. So once we put these all together, realizing we all believed that gifts was not appropriate, well, then we were able to remove that from the table and really have a real discussion, a real topic. And I think, I wanted to just pay recognition to Chile that already has an MOU with the Medical Association, and congratulations on that. That's a great start to the work and the collaboration that you can move forward with. So how do we go about building and developing a consensus framework? You need to adapt and co-create principles. You just can't say, let's find the common lowest denominator and that's what we're going to put together. You need to adapt that so that it really fits in the environment and reflects every stakeholder at the table. You have to find the right people to sit at the table. It's important that there's people that all have the same interest in advancing ethics. And from what I heard from here today, there is a great deal of interest in advancing ethics in Chile. And then take action and initiate. Somebody has to do that, be it the Chilean Association, be it a government body. Somebody has to take the action to really initiate this progress and start to create the roundtable. Who convenes at the beginning can change, and that can be adapted as we move along. But the important part is take that action. So what do we have in common? Ultimately, we can build trust and promote transparency by starting on common ground, where everyone is comfortable, and developing standards that allow us to build relationships that are mutually beneficial. Only through real collaboration can we ensure patients have the best possible health outcomes. And that's the ultimate goal at the end. So I just wanted to say thank you very much for inviting me here to speak today. I'm quite passionate about ethics and compliance, and I'm happy to have shared some of that passion with you today, and maybe even enhance your trust in the pharmaceutical and the medical device sectors. So I'm going to be around today if there's any questions or if you need anything else from me. So thank you. Gracias.